of media and technology and literature by African diaspora writers. The conversation will be moderated today by Sabrina Schmidt-Gordon. Sabrina Schmidt-Gordon is an award-winning documentary filmmaker and impact strategist from New York City. Her editing debut won an Emmy, and she has continued to distinguish herself as a producer, editor, and director. Sabrina was selected for the prestigious Women at Sundance Fellowship in 2017, and in June 2018 was inducted into the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. She is the producer of Quest, a New York Times Critics Pick, which premiered at Sundance and was nominated for numerous awards, including 2 Emmys, a Peabody, and 2 Independent Spirit Awards. Both interviewed Sabrina to discuss the making of the film, and a documentary disrupts American narratives about race. Sabrina's directorial debut was the Emmy-nominated Bad Sonia Sanchez, which she co-directed, co-produced, and edited, and which won Best Film Directed by a Woman of Color at the African Diaspora International Film Festival. She is the co-producer and editor of Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes, which also premiered at Sundance and documented the story of Pulitzer Prize-winning undocumented journalist Jose Antonio Vargas. Documented had record-breaking viewership on CNN and was nominated for the NBWC Image Award for Best Documentary. Sabrina produces, directs, and edits content for many journalism platforms, including the New York Times, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, and Frontline. She is co-chair of the Black Documentary Collective and a founding member of Beyond Inclusion. Thank you, Sabrina, for being with us today.
Can I add one thing? That's an whole bio. And I just wanted to add, no, it's all good. I just wanted to add, I have a film out that's actually playing at the African Diaspora Film Festival on Sunday called sorry. Is that better? Okay, yes. Situation. I was just saying that I have a film called Seeds, which was shortlisted for the Oscar this year and won the Grand Jury Prize at Sundance and is playing at the African Diaspora Film Festival on Sunday at Columbia University. So it'd be great to see all of you there. It's called Seeds, and it's just a beautiful lyrical film about Black centennial farmers in the South.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And our distinguished panelists today are Attica Torrance and Dr. Andre Brock. Attica J. Torrance is a multidimensional storyteller with no boundaries. He's won top-tier awards in every field of storytelling he has touched. He is a Television Academy Honors award-winning, 2-time Emmy-nominated producer, a multi-award-winning director and creative director, a Black Authors Festival award-winning author, an African-American Literary Awards-winning children's book author, actor, screenplay writer, live event producer, and a film industry veteran with over 25 years in the business. Born and raised in Bedside, Brooklyn, and Monrovia, Liberia, Attica attributes his creativity to his diverse, multicultural upbringing on 2 continents. And thank you for being with us as well.
Oh, let me just add that.
Here we go. And finally, I'm going to introduce Dr. Andre Brock. Dr. Andre Brock is an associate professor of Black.
Let me just add. I just got promoted to full professor last week.
Congratulations.
Oh, yes. Congratulations. Thanks for that clarification. So, full professor, Dr. Andre Brock. Yes, he's a professor of Black Digital Media at Georgia Tech. He's an interdisciplinary scholar with an MA in English and Rhetoric from Carnegie Mellon University and a PhD in Library and Information Science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. His scholarship includes published articles on racial representations in video games, Black women in web blogs, whiteness, Blackness, and digital technoculture, as well as innovative and groundbreaking research on Black Twitter. His article from the Black Hen Side, Twitter as a Cultural Conversation, challenged social science and communication research to confront the ways in which the field, in his words, preserved a, quote, colorblind perspective on online endeavors by normalizing whiteness and othering everyone else, end quote. and sparked a conversation that continues as Twitter in particular continues to evolve as a communication platform. His award-winning book, Distributed Blackness, African American Cyber Cultures, and that's out of New York University Press, theorizes Black everyday lives as Black joy, mediated by networked digital technologies. The author of numerous journal articles and book chapters, Dr. Brock's writings have appeared in prominent journals like Media, Culture, and Society, New Media and Society, Journal of Broadcast and Electronic Media, Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication, and Information, Communication, and Society. He has been interviewed by Wired, Rolling Stone, The New York Times, The Atlantic, Time Magazine, and The Root, and completed far too many podcast interviews, including Tech Won't Save Us with Pierce Martz, and the Black Studies podcast with Ashley Newby. He has contributed to the Hulu Disney documentary A People's History of Black Twitter as well. Dr. Brock is also a charter member of the NYU Center for Critical Race and Digital Studies. So with that, I'll just ask that we give a final applause to, well, not final, but and then I'm going to turn it over to Sabrina.
All right. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I'm just curious, just like maybe by a show of hands, how many folks here in their work as writers, filmmakers, or whatever else have either integrated new technology in their work and in their process in recent years, or just interested in learning more about that? All right, cool. So this is something that comes up for us, like, no matter what the art form, and I think especially for me as a filmmaker, because there's the visual, there's the writing, there's the audio, so like there's a lot of issues that come up around technology. So what I want to start with is just kind of like go kind of like macro, and then we can just kind of dig into the details. If like each of you could like share a little bit, just kind of an overview of how you think about technology in your work and your creative process. You can start.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes. Question one more time, just so I'm clear.
Kind of like a sort of overview of like how you think about technology in terms of like your creative process.
How I think about technology. Technology is here. That's what I think of it. It's not going anywhere. We have to figure out what that means for us. Each of us have to figure out what that means for us. And, we all, regardless of our age, we've all experienced technology coming to change the world. I don't care if you started writing with a pen and a paper and then moved to a typewriter and then to a word processor and then the Commodore 64 and then to where you are now. It's technology. I don't care if you lived in a hinterland somewhere and then one day someone built a monkey bridge across that's technology, right? So we just have to figure out what it means to us. It's here. So what I think of it is it's here. I have to figure out how to apply it. I have to figure out where I want to use it, and I don't want to be intransigent about my perspective to it. There are aspects of it that I need to learn, and many of us are purists, in our minds. We're purists while we're on our smartphones, right? But we don't use it to write, but we use it to define words, right? So it's like, you just got to figure out what it means to you. Like, of course, I want to be the one, all of my stories, all of my scripts, well, the vast majority of them start with a pen and pad, because that's the era I'm from. But they all morph into me on my laptop. And once I'm on my laptop, autocorrect is new technology. Like, spell check is new technology. So we just got to figure out how to adapt it, how to apply it, and most importantly, before we do that, we need to understand how to learn it. So that's what I think of it.
I'm so glad you're here. That's a fantastic explanation. So I have been writing about the internet for the last 25 years. And in the process of writing about the internet, I found that I had to define what technology meant, particularly in the context of computers, and then later on online and then smartphones. But I came across something early when I was writing, and I'll read a little bit of it to you. I swear it's not long. I didn't write it, so you can't get mad at me. But the article that I'm about to read from was written by Amiri Baraka, right? And it's called Technology and Ethos. And what he says is, responding to the idea that technology is a construct of modernity of the West, he says, if I invented a word placing machine like your typewriter or your smartphone, an expression scriber, if you will, then I would have a kind of instrument in which I could step and sit or sprawl or hang and use not only my fingers to make words express feelings, but elbows, feet, head, behind, and all the sounds I wanted, screams, grunts, taps, itches. I'd have magnetically recorded at the same time and translated into word, or perhaps even the final expressed thought feeling would not be merely word or sheet, but itself, the expression, three-dimensional, able to be touched and tasted or felt, or entered, or heard and carried like a speaking, singing, constantly communicating charm. And so this really hit me hard because he wrote that in 1970. Amiri Baraka had no idea what a smartphone was. But what he's really describing is the things that you can do with the smartphone. I know some of y'all still have TikTok on your phone, right? And so you've seen the youth and the older folk dancing and singing and having fun using really sophisticated capture technologies, your smartphone camera, the software that it embodies, and then really sophisticated editing suites, and then uploading it via really sophisticated technologies to be shared with your people around the world. I grew up when MCI was still a thing, right? And so the idea that you could have your child sit in the backseat of the car and say, let me talk to grandma without having to go home and look up grandma's phone number and then call on the landline and hope that our answering machine isn't on. Like, that to me is a transformative thing. And so some of the portion of this panel will be about Afrofuturism, and I'm definitely here to talk about that. But I also want to talk about the marvelous things that we do right now in the everyday, that we use digital technologies for. And I agree, technology is a tool, but I think at some point we should also talk about how these tools are being used to enforce certain conditions. So the previous panel talked about the technology of reproductive science, right, as practiced by Western people, and the fact that Black folk and brown folk had technologies to aid and prevent conception long before we came to the West, right? Similarly, when I talk about technology for the stuff that I'm writing now, I talk about how Europe did not see, and this is from Hegel on down to pretty much anybody you could think of that was a colonial administrator, they did not see Black folk as having the capacity for technology, and yet they imported people who could grow rice from West Africa. They invited metalsmiths from West Africa, right? And they invited other people from other countries as well, from India and China, to do this sophisticated craft, technical work that we were capable of doing long before the word civilization was brought to us with guns and germs, right? And so I want to keep in mind that we were technologists before we got here, and that there are ways that we can continue to be technologists, even though the technologies that we are being asked or forced to use these days are not built by us. We can still find ways to work around those things to make them work for us. So I'll stop there.
Wow, so you teed up a lot of things that I want to talk about, so I might just kind of like do sort of like an overview. Like, I'm thinking about technology, there are ways in which, okay, we can use them in terms of like how it enhances our creative process. There's also ways in which we can use them about how we reach our audiences or speak with our communities. And I think specifically for Black folks, and especially in this time where so much of our technology is being used to actually erase so much of our stories, like, what do we do to push back against that? So that's three big questions, but maybe I'll just start with how you're actually using it in practical terms. And maybe I have a feeling a lot of people are probably interested in AI, because that's a big conversation right now. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
I have multiple thoughts on this. I am not a creator. I have a large account on Twitter, sorry, X, but I'm not a creator. What I am is someone who's deeply interested in what Black people do online. And in many cases, a lot of the things that Black people do online was not anticipated by the people who created those networks. Right? So if you know about Vine, right? If you think about the ways in which Black creators on TikTok have created things, that's one way that I love to talk about Black creativity, Black expressive creativity, where we exceed the capacity of the network, of the software, to create things that resonate with us. But the other piece is just as relevant. These networks come with built-in assumptions about who can profit, who can commodify, and even who can view and participate in the discussions. right? And so it wouldn't be fair to say, well, we bring our creative energies to this space without recognizing that engagement algorithms and content moderation policies and creator economies also do a lot to suppress Black creativity. Some of you may have heard the term shadow banning, right? Where creators feel like they're not getting seen by the audiences they wish to reach the most. Right? So you also may have heard the term of engagement algorithms, which I just threw out a few minutes ago. But the idea that your social media feed is tailored to get you to either react in anger or react in joy, but either way, that reaction gets commodified and sold to a data broker and then used to surveil you and build profiles about you. Right? And those things are something that will always be of concern to Black folk. We were, when we were brought here, we used to have to carry our papers, and now we're back to carrying our papers. Right? And so how do you then think about your presence online when you know that you're already you're being hailed as part of these systems as a subject, but also as an object, right? And as a tool for the furtherance of white supremacy and technoculture. So I'll stop there.
Question?
I wanted to talk first maybe a little bit in practical, like granular terms, like how you use technology in like the creative process, and then we can talk about it in outreach and engagement and things like that. But maybe strictly like, we've had a conversation about those different ways.
In my creative process, I still pride myself on, all of my work coming fresh out of my mind. I do, I just do. So there are moments where, there were times when if you needed like a content group or think tank to work through things, now you can, incorporate some form of AI, whether it's chat or something you can throw. It starts with me, like I might write it and then ask a couple of things from chat, right? And then because of the way, I don't ever want to use just what it gives, but I like for it to give options. So I may even ask for 3 different options. Something as simple as, what should I wear to a National Black Writers Conference, right? Give me 3 options. That's something. Now, I might not use either of them, but I want to see what it comes up with, because I'm also in a place that is very important to learn it. I don't want to be atavistic in my thinking. I don't want to be Blockbuster, right? While Netflix is on the rise, right? Like, I don't want to be that. And I also have a child that I have to figure out what they're doing. The child and nieces and nephews, right? So how I use it is I pretty much feed it in the direction that I want it to go. I know for a fact that it's not mature and it lacks nuance. When I was learning, as a filmmaker, you deal with editors. Editors know the technology. You deal with sound designers. Sound designers know technology. You deal with cinematographers. Cinematographers know technology. So they're constantly coming at you with new stuff. Photographers know technology. This is technology, right? There was a time when we all, when I first started film, the camera had to sit on your shoulder. You know what I'm saying? And you had to look through a viewfinder, right? You can look through your phone now and see what the camera's doing. We all have to use technology. So I use it the way I need to use it, whether it's in production, post-production. We use technology in pre-production apps, whether we're doing budgets, whether we're doing schedules. We have to use it. So I use it the way I need to use it, but for my creative space, it starts here. Well, I think it starts here. But that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, it starts here, right? So I write, I feed it, I'm conscious of what I'm feeding it and what I expect to get back. Very rarely am I surprised, but one quick story, when my editor was showing me how to do some things, some new technology, and that's when this new image technology came out, and I asked it to show me what a child in Brooklyn in 1979 looked like, a black 8-year-old. Way off than what I was expecting. I mean, I happen to have been a black 8-year-old in Brooklyn, right? So all the pictures of myself and my friends and everything else, it was way off. It was way off. So it still lacks nuance. So it's not a cut and paste type of situation. you have to figure out how to work with it, how to use it, and things of that nature. And all forms of technology, to some degree, have, pushback. There was a time when people was like, you're using a calculator in class? Who uses a calculator in class? But now you need a $500 calculator in class. But you'll never ask a calculator to teach you how to spell, right? So you streamline the information that you expect from it, and that's how I use it.
So, I actually want to share like my own process with like AI and tech in general. Like, I'm not a Luddite by any stretch. I embrace technology like full on. But I also recognize that technology is like, I don't know if amoral is the right word, but it kind of is, in the sense that like you can use it for really great things and you can use it in really destructive ways. And so much of it is dependent on the intention of the user, but also like as a consumer, you have to be mindful of that as well. And just like a couple like tips, like one thing like with AI, and you were talking, Andre, a little bit about the commodification and things like that, and and we're living in a capitalist context. So there's all these things that kind of weigh in. So like, let's say you're using ChatGPT to like maybe for drafts or whatever it is. I tend to call like technology like it's smart and dumb at the same time. So you can put something in there, and oftentimes you assume that the information is accurate, but it actually isn't always. Even if it's culling from data that it has been fed, sometimes it gives you the wrong information. So I would just advise anyone who's using ChatGPT, especially if you're using the free version, it gives you wrong information. I'm not even kidding. So it's crazy that is the case. If you pay, you get more accurate results. So that's just something that I just want to throw out there.
Let me say something real
Sure.
quick. There's also something that we should be mindful of called industry standard. All industries and every single industry has something called industry standard. And the issue with industry standard, pro or con, however you slice it, there's some people that are coming up in the industry, all they know is industry standard. There was a time when, Apple was industry standard, right? There are certain places you go, whatever you have, like, they don't even do emails, like Slack, it become industry standard. It's important to understand where you stand when it comes to industry standard, because people will speak around you in certain rooms. You'll say, hey, I got a Canon. We don't use Canon anymore, we use Red. And that's a real thing, right? So how you use technology sometimes may have to do with you learning it for the sake of being up to snuff when it comes to industry standard.
So are there ways in which you feel like you absolutely would not use, I guess, again, it's kind of like an AI question, that where you have like maybe some limitation around that? Because some folks actually use AI, and maybe it's in maybe visual mediums, but they'll actually ask it to like create something. Like, is that something that you think about or care about or worry about?
I'll never have a girlfriend. I've seen movies like that, so I'll never do anything like. I'm not a computer guy. I mean, I use computers as much as I have to. I'm an outside guy, right? As much as I can close my laptop and go swimming or go outside and do something, I'm out. And I try not to be on my phone all day long. I am not that guy, right? I learn it as much as I need to know it. There are some things that I do not need to know, right? So if my editor knows it, when I go to the edit suite, good, right? That's why he's here. If my sound designer know it, I'm not one of the people that need to know it a whole lot. I actually have this belief that it's anecdotal. Any doctors in the house, don't shoot me down, right?
There's at least one.
No, there's several. We're in the university, right? I'm sitting next to one, I can see several, right? I believe, based on someone who has lived with elders who have gotten what they call Alzheimer's disease or dementia, I personally believe, because I've listened to them speak, and sometimes it sounds like it doesn't make sense. The issue is you're sitting in 2026 and they're talking about something that happened in 1958. Right? So they may say, go outside to my red Cadillac and look at my camel skin coat and get me a pack of sailors. You're like,
All balls.
yeah, Dad, you don't even smoke. What are you talking about? You don't have a red Cadillac. And then you tell your aunt the story, like, yo, Dad's bugging, man. He's talking about go to my red Cadillac, get his camel skin coat. She's like, well, he had a red Cadillac and a camel skin, you know. So what I believe is a lot of that comes from us not downloading our personal hard drives, right? I think a lot of that comes from too much information. I am really specific about not downloading information that I do not need.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So I'm not the technology guy from that perspective. I understand I believe I understand what I need. And I understand where to get what I don't have, and that's where I go for it. But again, I'm coming at it from a person who wants less into a successful life. For me is the life when I can literally be without my cell phone.
Right, right.
When I've gotten to the point where I don't have to reach out to people and I don't have to answer immediately. But that's how I get paid, right? So if I could just have an answer machine and come home and answer it when I want to and still make the money that I make, that'll be good for me.
Yeah. Now, you make a really good point about, like, you know, there's the good and the bad, because there's a way in which you can get so caught up in technology, you go down these rabbit holes, and it's all about you kind of going further, and then you're not doing the work that you're doing. And and I think part of that is also there's a commercial aspect, and it's very like the dopamine that you get from it. All of those things can really get you into a rabbit hole, and I mean, it's just really problematic in terms of like a creative process. So you want to be mindful that like you're always in control of how you're using it, how you're engaging it, and really being like having you be in control of it as opposed to it controlling you. Andre, I know you were going to say something. I can prompt you, but like I didn't want you to lose your train of thought.
So I envy you. As a professor, my university's email is on my phone. My university's calendar is on my phone, right? I also have a slight consulting business that's also on my phone, and so I don't really have the luxury to put my phone down. But also, story time. I started graduate school in September of 2001. Matter of fact, I flew out of LaGuardia on September 11th at 7:45 in the morning. Right, and so I have not known a world in which information, I mean, as a professional, I've not known a world in which information was not used for and against us, right? If we think all the way back to the Patriot Act, which we really don't talk about anymore, and we should, right, because it set the stage for a lot of the surveillance activities that are going on now by the government, right? But also the increasing integration of mobile technologies and email and learning management systems in the work that we have to do every day. Or if you're not in the academy, customer relation systems. How many of you writers have a Substack and have to manage your subscriptions and your audiences? How many of you creators have a YouTube or a TikTok and you have to manage it? So you are now all information professionals, right? And so I don't necessarily have the luxury of putting those things away, and I've been on Black Twitter for 18 years. Right, and so that's a lot of where my social life is. Like, that's how I get to know people. Other people use Instagram to find out where they go, right? Other people use TikTok to be entertained every day. But the internet and the digital is as much a part of our personal lives as it is our professional lives. From a professional perspective, as an educator, we're screwed, right? We have to assess essays written by AI from our students who know how to use AI tools to make them look like they weren't written by AI, and we assess them with AI tools. And we also have to upload our syllabi so that an AI that the university now wants to run can tell the students what courses they should take based on the AI summary of what it is that we're teaching, right? And so in many ways, the academy has become polluted with artificial intelligence. And I want to clarify, just as an aside, when I talk artificial intelligence, there will always be somebody in the room of technologists who say, well, not all AI, and I'm like, you're right. Not all AI. I'm specifically speaking of the textual ones, which use a transformer architecture, so your ChatGPTs, your Perplexity, and those things like that, Claude, Gemini, And then I'm also speaking about diffusion technologies, which produce the videos, which have become a real big problem. OpenAI just shut theirs down, right? And in many ways, those technologies pose a problem for me, both as an academic and as an author. I could not have gotten tenure by using AI to write anything I have. I couldn't even use it to, AI, the textual AI is wildly overconfident. It doesn't know what it doesn't know because it doesn't know.
Yeah.
Right? And so I see students, I'm regularly having to call students out like, these citations don't exist, right? You didn't write this
Wrong
paper.
information straight
That's
up.
not what
Like-
they said, right? And that makes me a manager instead of a creator and an author. That's not what I signed up for, right? And so that's a problem that's looming, and it's not just for information professionals like us. It's across almost all sectors. One of my favorite students is a film producer, right, and a documentarian, and she's talking about how having to manage AI in her workflow has both aided her in that she can do compositing and other editing tasks really quickly, but it also troubles her because how do you get accurate, and we can trouble that word, accurate, how do you get a compelling black representation on a technology that was trained on white people?
Yeah. Right.
Right? On a technology that, in its most effective application, is being used by ICE and by Palantir and by the freaking TSA to make sure that you are who you say you are, right? And has false positives as much as 30% for faces that are brown and or Asian, right? And so these are the technologies that I'm being asked, that I'm getting asked over and over again, or told that I must adopt. And I've been doing this long enough. I started doing this research back in the late 90s. I don't know how many of you remember community technology centers, where they told us to send our kids so that they could learn Microsoft Excel and become information professionals. And then we had coding academies where they told us to send our kids and they would learn how to code and they would get big money jobs, and they did. Then they got fired first, right? Or this is the fourth AI boom cycle. Right? We've had 3 VR boom cycles. This is the 4th AI boom cycle. We had crypto and big data, right? And so they will always tell us, business folk will always tell us that we have to adopt this now. And this is the time right now for us to start mounting a principled resistance to what AI, generative AI in particular, and the image ones will do to blackness. Because my argument across the new work that I'm writing is, does blackness scale? These AI models need trillions of pieces of data that they can then stitch together statistically, right? How much information about black people are y'all willing to give up? And don't me, because I see y'all on Threads and Twitter talking about, oh, show me pictures of y'all who were born in the 70s. Click, click. What was the first car you drove? Oh, I drove a such and such. Y'all be giving the information to the AI every day. Don't play, right? And so it takes a moment, right, to have a moment of reflexivity and say, what am I giving to this service that doesn't love me, doesn't care about me, wants to sell me, right? And again, I have a perspective as an information professional. I have a perspective in an institution like Georgia Tech that wants us to adopt these technologies without thinking through the consequences. But also as a person, is AI helpful? It can be, right? For certain tasks, as you said really well, it lacks nuance though. Right? You can't tell it to do everything because it's stupid, right? It will not be able to do things, but if it's, not only will it not be able to do things, it will lie and tell you that it did it, right? And so I have to bring these multiple perspectives to my students who want to learn how to be trained in AI, and I'm like, that's not going to get you the job you think it's going to get you, right? I have colleagues right now, and hopefully that's not y'all, who are actually writing answers to prompts that AI users upload to ChatGPT. They get paid $200 a prompt. So, easy money, right? But we're complicit in our own undoing. And so I'll stop there.
Yeah, well, I actually want to continue there because I think in terms of like the mounting like a principled resistance, as you say, like I think how do we start to figure that out? Because there's been lots of conversation about that. And I also teach. I teach at CUNY J School and at Columbia. And I teach in journalism. I teach journalists how to make documentaries. And almost everything we use is an app that I have to just navigate so many like different technologies, like to the point where it's overwhelming. I got to make sure I check my messages, I check the Slack, I check the this, I check the that. We're using, for example, Google Drive, but like Google owns anything you put on there. But yet, I'm teaching journalists who have to protect sources, who have to do things like that, and we're using Google Drive. Like it makes no sense to me, but at the same time, like you're so and this is kind of like what happens, like the technology moves faster than we can sort of keep up with it in terms of like, how do we legislate around it? How do we protect ourselves from it? How do, what is the ethical like frame in which we use it? So any suggestions to like get that happening? Because it's something I think about all the time, and it's overwhelming. And I would just say too about like how willing we are to get, like, so my brother's always like, you're a rebel without a cause, because it's like, it's a wrap, it's over. But like, I don't participate in like those things like, put up your picture, blah, blah, whatever, and because it's all about collecting your information. And in terms of information, there's nothing more valuable since like the gold rush or like the oil rush, you know what I mean? And, you think about like George Orwell in 1984, we thought there'd be resistance, but we actually participate in it without even being prodded to. And we're just giving that all away, but it's very hard to like, it can't be like this one person, right, that's resisting. It's like we have to figure out like ways to do that. And I don't know if it's large scale or small scale. Like, what are your thoughts, Andre?
Damn. Well, I would fix racism. No. How do you fight infrastructure, right? Because that's what we're confronting at this point. These technologies have become our infrastructure. And so think about when you're walking down the street and you see a curb cut. Like, do you think, oh, I should fix that or tear it down so that people can get by faster, or that people cannot get by faster? That's not how you think. You don't want to disrupt a water main because you don't know how many other people you're hurting, right? And so the individual actions, I think you make a really good point. The individual actions will not be enough. You have to turn to something I've been calling technoculture, right? And so I make this argument in my work that you can understand technology as a three-piece. 2 pieces and a biscuit. The 2 pieces, the chicken part, is the technology itself, what it is, this microphone, and the other part, the thigh, is what the practices that we have with the technology. So the camera is a really good example, right? A camera is a device that was designed to capture and record an image based initially on a chemical process, now on a digital process, right? But what you can do with that camera varies as much as the person who carries it, the intentions they wish to use it for. One of my colleagues, Alyssa Richardson out at USC, wrote a fantastic book called Bearing Witness, writing about the young people who captured, or Diamond, who captured Philando Castile's death, the young lady who captured George Floyd's death. Without those testimonies, without those smartphone recorded testimonies, we would not have had an instrument of justice for which their killers could be prosecuted, right? So the camera has multiple uses. The third thing, though, the thing that I try to beat my students about the head and shoulders with, is that culture, right? How do you know, who are you when you're using the technology? And the easiest way I can explain this is when you're on LinkedIn, you're not the same person you are on Instagram. I hope not. I hope you're not posting your vacation photos to LinkedIn, right? They don't want to see your new pedicure. And so they might, but OnlyFans exists, right? Right? And so when you start thinking about the spaces in which you can and should interact with technologies, I think that's a beginning, right? You start telling folk, hey, just take a moment, stop. What are you contributing to this infrastructure of information that's being used? And it's hard to get people to think about that, because the second thing they say is, well, it's convenient. The Google Drive is a really good example, right? Google Maps is a better example. I use Google Maps every day. I've been living in Atlanta for 7 years, right? Because Google Maps tells me where the traffic is. But if you look at your Google Maps activity, if any of you are still Google Maps users, you can ask it to show you where you've been, and it will show you this lovely circle, because you have a habit of going to the same places every time. And they sell that information, right? And so then do I turn off the map and take my chances on the Cross Bronx? Right? It's infrastructure right now, right? I need to know the traffic crossing time. Like, let's be clear, right? And so then you have a difficult and an existential choice. Like, what actions can you take? And this is why I like having artists sitting at the table with me, because I think artists have a really unique approach to talking about what they can do and what they won't do with AI, because so much of art is craft and work, right? And AI doesn't know either of those things. It's been designed by people who didn't want to take a humanities or arts course and think that all of a sudden, because they have this tool, they can create the next Drake, the next Monet or Picasso or Basquiat, right? So I'm going to turn this back to my co-panelists and say, like, how do the arts help you? And you made a really good starting point. How does the arts help you kind of resist what technology offers you? in terms of getting it.
I appreciate that. Well, evolution is a thing. We will continue to evolve. As technology evolves, we got to consider, along with the evolution of technology, the evolution of acceptance of the technology, right? So there was a time when the word conversate was shunned.
Irregardless.
Now, irregardless, conversate, and all the other ones, all the other words that we know. We can all, as a room full of writers, we can say a whole bunch that we look at and we cringe. But now, if you cringe in a certain room, you're the outsider. You're the problem. So the acceptance of evolution is a thing because you will wind up being the outsider. So as we speak about technology and acceptance, the evolution of technology, we have to consider the evolution of acceptance because the truth of the matter is the way life occurs, and I see some, I'm not the only gray beard in here, we all know how this works. Life occurs in degrees or moments or whatever you want to call it, right? So each time you leave a degree and start a new one, when you leave junior high school, after you've locked into all of what you know in your social life, now you go to high school, now you're freshman all over again. And then you finally get to 12th grade and you done locked in. You know where this is, you know where there, you know where you sitting in the cafeteria, you know where you sitting in the gym. Then you go to college, and you might just go to college way far from home. It would be good if you stay somewhere near because some of your high school friends can go, but then you might go 3 states over. Now you're starting all over. The interesting thing is, if you don't accept technology, you're that team that's moving out and another team is moving in. And acceptance of the evolution is a real thing. How I tend to use it, again, there are no tricks to it. I let the pros do what they do. I don't go in, I'm a very collaborative creative. I don't go in there telling them what to do. I tell them what I see and what I want, and they show me how to do it. If you think about a film set, any filmmakers in the house? Cool. If you broke that down into a corporate structure, the director is the chief creative officer. The producer is the chief financial officer. And the cinematographer is the chief technology officer. The cinematographer learns how to he understands how, or she understands, shout out to the Oscar-winning cinematographer from Sinners, right? She learns, or he learns how to take the creative idea and translate it cinematically. And then he tells everybody under him, the key grip, the set designer, the gaffer, all of them how we're gonna make this happen. But it's not the director's job to know how to do that. It's not the director's job to know the tax incentives in New Orleans versus New York and how we're gonna, monetize this film, right? It would be great based on how they're doing things now if you did know, or if you do know, but it's not that your job. It's your job to hire a producer who understands that. I am clear about my lane, and I stay in it. I produce top-tier documentaries that have won major awards. I've been in the film business for quite some time, but I know how to stay in my lane. The good thing about being in my lane is I know a little bit about your lane, so if you bullshitting me, I know. But still, it's difficult not to, especially when you got a child, right? It's difficult not to be this guy. Like, what the hell do you need eyelashes for?
You was born with them.
Explain that. And that's a word, right? So, explain that. What do you need eyelashes for? But then I start sounding like the old guy in the room. No, I'm not your nigga. I'm not. Oh, you just always take it. No, stop. But I'm always that guy. And sometimes you know, it becomes heavy carrying that load, but My name is Attica. I've been carrying that load my whole life, right? So I'm used to it. When it's not there, I start looking like, why am I agreeing with all these people, right? I start thinking, why am I agreeing with all these people? But the truth of the matter is, acceptance of evolution is a real thing, and you just got to find out how to get in where you fit in. You know what I'm saying? Because you will either be, it's cool to learn new stuff. It's not good to reject it just because, oh, I ain't about that. I ain't about that AI stuff. It's good to learn it sometimes. And the sad part is, we wanted to listen to music on a record at one point. We wanted to hear, we wanted to hear how pure it sounds. Then they switched it to you don't even own your records no more. There was a time when your record collection was a thing, and you took pride in it, and you displayed it, and you showed it when people came to your house. I bet you ain't got that new Barry White. Shit, if I don't, boom, right? There was a time you took pride in your movie collection. There was a time you took pride in the pictures you take. You don't even have them. Because if your subscription ends, you don't even have all the thousands of pictures that's on your phone. Now, the thing is, industries have changed because finding a place that print pictures now can be challenging. Right? So the industry has evolved. So whether you accept it or not, there's you don't even have no more Metro cards, no tokens, no nothing. The industry changes. So as technology evolves, a certain level of acceptance has to evolve. And if you're a professional, you have to know industry standard, because if someone says we'll slack you and you be like, what the hell is that? Or we sent the message and you don't know what it is, you're the outsider. So now you got to figure out how to fit in this space.
I want to jump in here because I want to make sure that we get to this other part of it, but I want to just hasten to add all the things that you brought up, for example, with ownership, people who write, people who make films, someone buys your book on Kindle or whatever, they don't really own the book, you know what I mean? And so those are the kinds of things that you want to think about when you're talking about when you're wanting to reach audiences.
Which is why I'm the only one that's selling my book.
Yeah.
Period.
And then the thing about the records is now it's become kind of cool to want to hear that static again. So there's a whole industry, cottage industry around buying vinyl, you know what I mean. Cottage. So it's just kind of
not even cottage anymore.
No. It's about people wanting to get it now. So it's almost like a rarefied hobby or whatever to have a vinyl connection. But again, it's all kind of ultimately a marketing thing. But I want to get to the part that I want to get to now is we're talking about the creative process, but there's also the engagement process. How technology has helped or hindered the ways in which we can connect, the ways in which we can get our art out, how we can connect to our audiences and things like that. If you want to talk a little bit about how, and if you use it in that way, I mean, I think you do to some extent, but if you want to talk about how to use technology has technology actually helped you connect better with your audiences across boundaries, geographical and otherwise?
Sure, it has helped. It has helped me connect with my audience, right? I'm still, I don't have 100,000 followers, right? But I can draw a direct line in some cases to this particular purchase based on what I posted. I can definitely do that. In many cases, I can draw a direct line to this particular contract based on a post. So as much as I try not to be on social media, I have to be on social media. It's just what it is, because there are people that ask you. There was a time when people would ask for websites, and if you didn't have a website, it was okay. There was a time when people would ask you for business cards, and if you didn't have a business card, even now, somebody can ask you for a business card and you don't have it. It's well, take my number. They're like, follow me on Instagram. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It's interesting. And then so you just have to fit in. You got to get in where you fit in. It's really about what it is you want to do. Now, if you're not the type of person that needs to get out there and find a new audience and make sales and do all of that, then I wouldn't even worry about it. But if you're someone that needs that, then you got to be out there, because there are people that don't go to the Googles. There's some people that just goes to Instagram, TikTok. What's the best restaurant out here? Because they want to see how you pour syrup on the pancakes, and they want to see the flower wall in the back with the neon lights, and they want to see that, right? So you just gotta you gotta figure out. It helps me in some cases. So during the pandemic, the year's 2020. It sounds like the year was 2020. The whole world was shut down.
Right.
Everybody was sheltering in place and quarantining. If you lived in Brooklyn, it was somewhat dystopic. You heard sirens, you heard fireworks, you heard about bodies in trucks. It was a whole thing, right? I created a book, my first book, and I created 500 copies, and I was going to sell them for $100 each. Who laughed? Who laughed? Raise your hand if you laughed. You laughed? Who else laughed? You laughed? Who laughed? You laughing at me? And I was going to do it in 3 months. That's funny, right? I was going to do it that's a miracle, right? That's hilarious. I was going to do it in 3 months. My birthday is May 31st. I made a film. I was supposed to drop a book. I was supposed to make a movie and all of that at the same time, and then I was going to sell it through the summertime, But man plans, God laughs, things happen, right? So it didn't take me 3 months. It took me 9 months to sell 500 copies for $100 each. Okay. Right? And that's because the world shut down.
Right.
Had it not shut down, I'd have been out selling it all summer long, and I'd have sold it in the summer.
Off the trunk.
Straight up. And the reason why I did that, for all the authors in the room, I have friends who have published books through the major houses, and they told me what kind of money I could make. And I was like, what? Like, as a first-time novelist, that's all the money y'all getting out here? Y'all getting in these streets? Like, I can trump that myself. And that's when I created the special limited edition copy, and I sold 500 copies for $100 each. For that round of books, I made $50,000. I was happy. I was done. And then somebody who purchased my book was the Deputy Commissioner for Education for New York State. And he said, this book is dope. And he was also one of the heads of the My Brother's Keeper program. He said, I need this for my students. Do you have paperback? I said, when do you need it? He said, April. I said, yes, I got paperback. True story. I've been a vendor selling to the schools for the past 4 years, right? And I've made way more than I was told I would make if I go to one of the big houses, right?
That's a whole,
But the way I was able to do that was social media,
yeah.
because we were locked in our homes.
Yeah.
We were locked in our homes. And fortunately, because we were locked in our homes, people started reading. And I'm not saying they stopped reading before, but you had more time to read. I did all of my reading on a train back in the days, right? All of my reading on a train. Since COVID, I haven't been on a train really. Like, a couple of times, so I recognize how much it significantly retarded my reading, But during that moment, COVID pushed us all to the internet. If you went to the doctor, you had to MyChart. Everything about your life was pushed onto the internet. So to now sit outside of it is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
That's where we are.
Yeah. Andre, I wanted to have you talk a little bit about social media and engagement, because I think in a lot of ways it's been transformative for me in my work, in the ways I can reach communities, because especially as a documentarian, often my films have themes that I can reach everyone that's interested in such and such, or places where I want to be transformative, because I use it also, and I'm very transparent about this, that my work is my activism. So I connect with organizations and all of those things to leverage my films as tools for them to continue the work that they do. And social media has been really transformative in that. So I don't know if you have thoughts about the ways in which that's good, and maybe also, again, everything's paradoxical. There's the sort of the perils of it as well. But I think it would be helpful for folks to know really how you can really strategically leverage it to do the work and get access where traditional avenues don't give you that access.
So I tend to stray away from topics about engagement, and So let me start here and then I'll come back. When I went to graduate school in 2001, I went out to Pittsburgh. And apparently I was drawn west because my next graduate school was Urbana-Champaign. And then my first faculty job was Iowa City, Iowa. And at that point, I had lived in New York for close to 20 years. So if you can imagine going further Midwest, black people are looked at very differently. In the city, sometimes I was a Dominican. Right? Out there, because I had locks, they're like, oh, you're not black, you're biracial. Right? And so one of the first things I did when I got out that way is I went online. For the old heads who maybe have been online back in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a website, Barry Cooper's Black Voices, right? Or AOL.com. We used that to connect with one another via Java chat, right? And, going to graduate school in the early 2000s is very different from how people go to graduate school in the 2010s, right? And even now, when you had to contact a professor to ask for a letter, some time, you actually had to maybe email them, but mostly show up at their office. And what the internet afforded us was the capacity to reach out to faculty we had never met, right? Which was interesting because for many of us, even now, I'm kind of jealous of the community here at Medgar Evers. I've been the only black person in the department at most of the places that I've either taught at or even guest lectured at, right? And so when you're in that environment, how then do you reach out to other black faculty when you're in a town that has 100,000 people when the football game comes to town? Right? And so the internet has facilitated for a while, then this is Twitter specifically, right? A community of black academics, and it was beautiful while it was there. We would lift up the juniors and the seniors would come in and contribute without being snarky or telling people, you can't get like me, it's only one of me. Sorry, right? They would actually have conversations, robust conversations and it's not just the academics, right? For queer folk, there was LiveJournal and Tumblr. Right? For young women, LiveJournal, Tumblr, and Twitter. Ajioma mentioned Feminista Jones in the last panel. There's a whole cadre of black feminist academics who use Twitter. My colleague Susanna Morris is one of the original crunk feminists, right? And so in many ways, black feminism exploded. Moya Bailey was an undergrad at Spelman when she came up with Miswajanar, right? But it's a term that you see everywhere now, and in part, that's because of the spread of the internet. And so I talk about engagement in terms of how people find their passions to go online, and then sometimes they can monetize those passions. And I've had, at this point, 20 years of students telling me, no, people just go online to make money. You all know the people you follow who are influencers, you can tell the ones immediately who are just there to make a buck. And you don't follow them for long. You might get that one video, but that's not the person you keep logging in. It's a combination of charm, of technical skill, of subject matter expert knowledge, but also the capacity to keep entertaining you over and over and over again. That's a very rarefied strata, right? There are many more people who are not in the 1% than are in the 1%, but all of them are doing this hustle, fighting with an engagement algorithm, right, to get your attention, to get your interest. But I still maintain that only the ones who are interesting, not the ones that stir up conflict, like Shits and Gigs or Drink Champs, or, I don't know, name your favorite, Joe Rogan, right? Name your podcast, right? Or different video podcasts, Uncle Shay Shay. Right? They give you something, right? All those people in here laughing. How many black women went on to social media after they viewed an episode of Scandal? Right? Or whatever your favorite show, Game of Thrones, right? Social media brings you something that connects you with other people. And that's a form of engagement I prefer to talk about a little bit more, but I'm very much aware that there's an economy.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't actually mean the economy portion. It was
That's
really
okay.
the connection point.
But I think it's important to
that.
talk about because, again, so many of my students think that the economy is the only way to understand black contributions to the internet, right? And I'm like, no, we are on the internet in part because the way I write about it, many of the ways we talk to one another, conversate. I wrote a different kind of academic monograph, right? My monograph has half a chapter on a phenomenon on Twitter called the nigger navy, right? When I mention it in my talks, it gives me a PG-13 rating on every talk, right? For those of you who don't know, and this is real, I keep this short. In 2017, Yahoo posted a tweet right after Trump went into office, and they said Trump is going to need they meant to say bigger navy in the South China Sea. What they published was Trump is going to need a nigger navy in the South China Sea.
What was meant and what was said might
Like,
be debatable.
and my thing is, ain't no way autocorrect change your word from bigger to nigger. Like, this just not gonna, so we can't say it was a technical thing, right? Also, like, in what sense did you look at that and say, you know what, we're good, hit publish, right? So clearly there was a human error in that as well. And the way I wrote about it is, black people could have been mad. We would have boycotted Yahoo like we boycotted Target. We did not. What we did was we started making jokes about it, right? There were all kinds of jokes. One of the ones I published in the book is this woman has a picture of a woman on vacation, scuba gear, flip-flops, sitting in a beach chair underwater. Just chilling, just like this, underwater, scuba gear, bubbles coming up, talking about waiting for my man to come home from the nigger Navy. Right? The New Yorkest one of it all, somebody posted a picture of a Timberland boot that was pulled up to a pier called the SS Deadass. Right? Talking about who all going to the Gulf War. You got gas money for the Gulf War? Right? And so we took that and we made it humorous. And to me, that's my favorite kind of engagement, right? Where we have the same jokes, the same signifying, the same conversations about toxic personalities, right? Or about people who just decided that they wanted to be the main character on stage. Those things are the things that are interesting to us and occupy us, right? And so I try to keep it on that level, in part because I feel like we spend way too much time talking about the things that make us miserable, the things that make us upset, the things that make us sad.
So
and I keep trying to remind people that we have other things that we can bring up too.
And I just wanted to make clear, because I don't feel like I answered the question fully last time. In our business, you know, technology has made a lot of people lazy, right? There was a time when casting directors wanted to be out. They wanted to be in the off-Broadway shows to find a new person, and they wanted to be in the neighborhood table readings, and they wanted to find a new thing. Now they're sitting at home asking, right now, in order to be an actor, you gotta be a makeup artist, you gotta be a lighting designer, you gotta be a camera person, and you gotta do self-tapes, and you gotta send them out, right? I have in my plug, in my latest film, Sins of the Father, part of it, the lady was in Cali. And the reason why I used it the way we did is because I wanted to elucidate clearly it happens during COVID. So I wanted to make clear that there was a time when some of these newscasters were not as glamorous as they would be on a daily basis during COVID. And so part of us making the movie, I was like, you ain't getting no makeup artist, you gotta fix your own hair, and you're gonna come on like that. You know, some of these dudes that looked like they were in their 30s, we started seeing these fully gray beards come out, you know, but so we shot it, and I used moments of Zoom in the movie. It's called Sins of the Father, and it's out right now, but we had to use it because we're speaking. I didn't use it just from a technology cheat perspective. I used it because that's what we were experiencing in the moment, because COVID is a character in this movie. But we have spaces now where editors can be in Germany and edit your film and you never meet them. We have situations where a lot of voiceover artists have studios in their own, they have sound booths in their own houses. They've converted closets or built sound, and you'll tell them what you need, and you can direct them via Zoom in another country. You can say, nah, give me more intonation, inflect a little more, or, you know, you can do all of that in real time. So the fact of the matter is the technology is changing. In many cases, acceptance of it is changing, you know, and that's one aspect of it professionally. Now, my daughter is a musician, she's a performer. My mother in North Carolina can pull up on a stream and watch her on her living room television. It's here, right? So I just wanted to add that the industry has fully embraced it.
Cool. So we're going to move to questions from the audience. One thing I just add to just wrap this conversation up, I think it's interesting that you should also think about, like, there's so many ways we talk about, like, user experience, engagement, all these different kinds of terms that can mean very different things. So you also, again, have to be really clear about, like, what your intention is. For me, engagement, I came through it through activism. So it was always about organizing. It had nothing to do with money. It had everything to do with organizing and creating community and strategy and things like that. So I just wanted to add that piece that, there's a myriad ways that we can be engaging the technology, and even the terms that we use can have very different meanings. So I want to open it up now to anyone who has a question. I guess they'll raise their hand and a mic, or come to the mic or something like that.
That's not fair. You were sitting right there.
I planned strategically.
Yeah, nice.
First of all, thank you all. I hope you guys can hear me. Thank you very much. It was a very interesting and enlightening conversation. My name is Nadine, and I actually work in a capacity where I have to deal with AI every day, not just to get things done. I attended the opening night conversation with Nicole Hannah-Jones and Michael Harriot, and one of the I don't want to say it was a throwaway comment, but one of the almost adjunct comments at the end of one of Mrs. Jones's references was talking about our capacity to be prepared for the world that's being built for us by people who may not have our best interests at heart. Please forgive me if I'm not phrasing it exactly as she does. I don't pretend to have her dexterity. There is a meme, if you will, about us not being our ancestors, and that I would have never been a slave, and I would have never done this, and I would have had capacity to do, I would have done better, I would have fought back. And the reality of it is, we live a life, I live a life, we live in a world where ease and comfort is sort of my North Star. I want things to be easy, I want things to be comfortable, and I bring this up as a background in the context of technology, because one of the things that I question is how much of what we're experiencing is about a world creating a view for us where things need to be this easy and this comfortable to appease us away from resistance. If the topic of this larger conference is how we arm ourselves with the tools for active resistance, how do we demonstrate that? How do we find that or capture that where the technology wants us to think less, wants us to do less, wants us to ask less of it, and we think challenging it, leaning into the difficulties by not being one of the adopters, early adopters, fast adopters, quick adopters, will leave us behind. Is there a world where you're supposed to fight the ease of the AI, fight the ease of the anesthetizing aspects of what tech offers us? And as people who engage in literature, isn't that one of our calling?
I'll just say, very good, yeah, that was a very thorough question. But I'll just say quickly that for me that like that question has everything to do with the way I approach using the technology, because the technology is not telling me to do anything per se, that I am very intentional, but that I use it for activism. I use it for disruption as much as I can. And sometimes it's very difficult because you're not in control of who owns the technology and how they want you to use it. But I always try to think very intentionally about how I'm using it to disrupt those things so I don't lose sight of that and I don't become complacent. In fact, I use it like, how does this empower and how do I take this and I can leverage this as like a superpower to do the things that I'm trying to do. So that's how I think about it.
I swear I'll keep this brief. I grew up in the South. I wash clothes on a washboard. According to some of the stuff I teach in my course, Science, Technology, and Race, women used to spend up to 12 to 15 hours a day washing clothes. How many of you are ready to give up your washer and dryer so you can go back to washing your clothes? Right? And so some of it, I'm resistant, right? It's attractive almost, right, to say that people need to throw off their chains and get free. And I'm like, well, what are the systems that encourage people to be this way in the first place? Many of our technologies have domesticated us. My example with the GPS is a really good one. The domestic technologies, it turns out that apparently having a vacuum cleaner to sweep the floors for you and washer dryer to wash your clothes has not necessarily reduced the amount of time you spend doing housework. Right. Or in my case, not doing housework. Right? Right? If we're being honest. Them clothes ain't been folded since before I left Atlanta, right? And so I say this to say that it's always going to be complicated, right? You have to pick and choose where your battles are. And so that's one of the reasons why I turn to the artists to talk about the capacity for work and for craft, right? Many of the times in our work life and our personal life, we are inundated with information overload where we are constantly asked to be more productive, more efficient, do more with less, right? And for our students, they don't see the value in this education that we're offering them. So they take the AI and use it because they don't understand why I think it's important. You write a paper about the philosophy of technology. Like, we don't care about Marx. He wasn't even about technology, right? And I'm like, no, there's something here, right? And so the challenge is, in part, for us as adults to encourage our peers and our young folk that there is value in taking on things which are not immediately productive, which are not immediately efficient, which, you know, if there are any athletes in here, every athlete can tell you for every time they run that one Olympic race, they run around that damn oval 1,700 times. You have to do the work in order to become excellent. And technology has, in many ways, convinced us that you can shortcut and do the work. Right, and so it comes back to us. How do we see ourselves when we use these technologies? So there's a term that I use called convivial, right? It's this scholar called Ivan Illich, I-L-I-C. He's Latin, and he said we have all these modern tools, right? But they should only be tools. Anytime they exceed the capacity of the human to be human, that means we need to dial back what our uses of them. So when you can, take a moment to say, I don't need this to do. Did you really need that email? I mean, that AI to write your email? I did, because I've lost jobs using email. But sometimes you need to say, how do I say per my last email without cussing somebody out? Sometimes AI is good for that, right? There are other things which AI is not that good for. Anything requiring deep thought or concentration, that's not necessarily a thing. And so these are questions that you need to ask yourself as you're going through. Sorry, I started running my mouth again. My bad.
Hi, thank you for this conversation. It's really helpful as an academic who is definitely a bit of a Luddite. I actually have a fountain pen with me. Straight up.
A Luddite's not a bad thing, though.
No,
And she was over there.
I didn't. Exactly. You saw me.
Good for
I guess I would
penmanship.
say that I think that part of our job, however we are in this room, as creators, as academics, et cetera, as readers, as writers, is to think about how we can create the space to do what I call slow thinking.
Yes.
And so for me, for the past 18 months, have stopped allowing, except if I have to because of disability, my students to use a laptop in my class. I buy notebooks and I hand them to them and they complain. And I say, you have to learn to slow your thought down so that you can actually participate in the conversation by taking notes and not just zone out on your screen. Mm-hmm. I think that it feels frustrating for us because because of age or the kind of work that I do, it makes me crazy to see how much time we spend on our screens. But I also think that I have these little moments when I can offer a practice that is not about rejecting, because I want my washing machine, and my God, I can't survive without Google Maps. I had no idea that they knew where I went, but of course. But I think that we have to figure out ways in our own spheres to both use and then also kind of model the refusal, right? Which might get to your question about resistance. So.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
There are a few things. One, I think one thing to take into consideration that if you're an instructor, professor, teacher, whatever it is you are right now, chances are the people in your classroom are of a certain age. 6 years ago, they were trapped in their houses for 2 years, right? So let's keep that in mind, right? 6 years ago, their dance classes shut down, their dojos, their gyms, their basketball, everything shut down for at least a year, and for others longer, right? And they were pushed, and some extroverts became introverts, right? So some people who I know some people who lost their entire college careers in that moment. A young lady who had a killer sophomore year, broke her leg her junior year, COVID came senior year, which she was supposed to be a number one. She wound up not even playing for 2 years, right? I can't even address, aside from what it did to her physically, something happened to her mentally, right? And while it was happening, while she was recovering, she was online. She was they then told her, now you need to learn Zoom and take a class, And you know what it took me to cut class? And I was good at it. Imagine if all I had to do was close the screen. How many parents was like, are you in your class? How are you late for a Zoom class when you're in your room all day? Like there's a lot that happens. So it's not saying that we gotta give, like I grew up in a place where they didn't give children a whole lot of grace. You did what you were told, right? But we have a space now where these children, something really happened to them. We still don't know, we can't quantify what fully happened to them. So there's something that we need to consider as teachers, as parents, as instructors. And I'm not saying let them off the hook, but I'm saying consider it. And to your point, I think it's just important to learn what other folks are doing and then apply. The serenity prayer matters. Like, just apply it where it needs to be applied.
Yeah. I want to actually add also in terms of because I think you made a very good point about it's not so much about rejection, but it's about another tool. And I think we don't talk about it that way enough because we didn't even get to the piece about what phone scrolling and all of that stuff is doing to your brain, like cognitive function. I mean, it's real, So I think they probably don't realize the gift that you're giving them. But there's been studies about writing does good things for your memory and your retention and all of these things. And again, everything's happening so fast and all these tools, and everybody wants to add the tools that no one's really thinking about. Okay, what are the ramifications? What are the consequences? What do we gain versus what do we lose? And so I try to be very intentional about that. And then I would just say as a teacher, then you have the added thing, if you tell somebody to turn off their screen, they go complain to the dean and don't want to and then depending on their administration, some are really accommodating and it's whatever they want, and some are more no, so. Yeah, yeah. But it doesn't have to always be a rejection. It's not either or. It's both and. And again, thinking about it very maybe transactionally is for lack of a better word. It's a tool. Everything's a tool. A pen is a tool. A Microsoft Word is it's just tools. What you bring to it is is what makes the difference and how you leverage them. So.
Okay, so I don't know if it's a question or more of a statement. It's speaking to Andre, right? Mm-hmm. Washing machines, dishwashers, dryers, they were not created for us. It was created for the white woman's convenience, right? And so hand washing is still a necessity, right? So it's not obliterated. I think what we need to do, especially as people of color, is to look at how we use both of them to our service versus how it's for lack of a better word, retarding our progress, right? I don't think we're ever going to forget how to make tinctures in order to heal ourselves, and where we need to go and pick the roots we need to heal ourselves, right? That is never going to be obliterated because it lives in our DNA, right? And then, but also, we don't talk about the environmental damage that AI is taking, is putting on our society, right? And how we need to have both. We need to have analog. We need to have digital, because what if the freaking power goes out? As a health professional, it is a necessity for me to have hard files as well as digital files, because I need something to go back to in order to support my clients effectively in their healing, right? And so, yes, it's beautiful, yes, it evolves, but we still need to keep our feet in the dirt, which is, to your point, is what happened with our children during COVID and the loss. No more sunshine, no more fresh air, no more playing in the dirt, no more riding your bikes, chasing your friends, and getting
more illnesses.
So I'm a psychotherapist, and it's a disease.
Yeah.
And parents are like, why are my children acting this way? Because you're not sending them outside. Because they're not getting the sun and the air that they need. The Japanese practice forest bathing. Why? Because the trees heal us. We have lost our connection to the earth. We don't put our feet on the dirt anymore. I can't wait to put my feet in the dirt. It makes me feel so much better, connected to God. Right? And not in a religious way, but in a spiritual way, which is the way we've always practiced how we love ourselves and give back to the earth, right? And pay homage to our ancestors. And I think therein lies the disconnect between why extroverts have become introverts. Solitary confinement is punishment on purpose. Mm-hmm. You have everybody locked into their space versus tapping into a community, which is what my tribe did, where we reached out to each other and talked. And I know that I have a house here in Jersey. please come here and get the medicine that you need versus let me just stay isolated. And I think that's what's lost and what we need to maintain our connection to, regardless of what technology evolves to. Because when it's all said and done, they're gonna come to us to look for what they need. Food, basics, all that other stuff. How to communicate. I don't need a phone to talk to my sister. I think about her and she calls me. That's technology if you want to talk about, what we really have access to and how it is that we're able to maintain our connections. My father drove a yellow cab for, 25 years? He knew the city like the back of his hand, right? We use landmarks to get around, to remember where it is we need to go and how to get there. So we are the technology is what I would like to just say.
Thank you.
I tend to push back on that, only because we were brought here.
I'm sorry.
Because we were brought here to be a technology. That's all. Right? And so I struggle with that particular framing, but I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed part of what you said.
There's two women had their hands up.
Yes.
Over there and over there.
Yeah.
One
No.
with the
I want to
hat
make sure
and one
folks
over
get
there.
a chance
Yep.
to run out of time.
So your final statement that we are the technology, I tend to struggle with that because that's why we were brought here and why I try to say that we were technologists before that ever happened. Not the technology, we were technologists, right? And I think that's a crucial distinction, right? And so we can talk about it.
I mean, but I'm saying, like, again,
Okay, I want to stop this for a second because she didn't get a chance to add. You had your hand up for a minute. Somebody had
Her
yeah.
and her.
Was the woman
Young
with
lady in
the
the hat.
and
Yeah.
Dr. Ayo had her hand up too.
Okay. We'll both get a chance. So whoever's got the mic.
What I was gonna offer is just take the mic to everyone, and then the last three of you all can ask your questions.
Okay, perfect.
Hello. It's all been great panels today, so this is great. I was wondering when we were talking about, in terms of resistance, if language can be one of those resistance, and we're, again, going back to what we had before, because I've been using, I'm a bit Luddite-ish as well, and I've only been using ChatGPT to transcribe poems so that I can manipulate them, using Word in a book. So everything was going fine, and they were coming out exactly as they needed to, until I input a poem that was written in patois. And I actually gave it to a friend of mine who was doing a lot of the Jamaican patois, and I had to call her and say, what have you done? All of these poems in Jamaican patois, why did you rewrite them? She says, I didn't. And she realized that what she did was, she said, I realized there was going to be an issue, so I just typed them up myself. And the ones I was looking at, it basically translated somebody else's poem into a different version of patois. It's not it did it in English, it did it its own patois. The patois wasn't wrong, it just wasn't the poet's patois.
Right. Which patois? Yes.
Yeah, and so it kind of, I'm sure that it's all kind of done in different languages, but I'm wondering things like patois and Creole, which are not even considered languages, which I think they are, if that is a way of, in some ways, of resistance, because no matter what patois you put in, whatever the poet has written, it's never going to know it, because it's come from the poet's head, and it's come from the poet's version of their patois, as it would in Creole. So I wonder in terms of, because I don't use that much, how ChatGPT and things like that in terms of language, how it deals with that. Have we kind of pushed ahead? Have we got one over it?
I don't think you should be feeding it your language. I think language is resistance. Language has always been resistance. Has always been resistance, and I honestly don't think you should be feeding it your language.
So you're saying that it is actually better if
It doesn't know your language.
Exactly. So I'm saying it's better just to do them manually and then don't feed it language. Okay.
And it doesn't have to do everything. Nothing, yeah, anyway.
Yeah, to answer your question, yes, language is resistance. It's always been resistance, whether it was songs, whether it was words, no matter what it is.
There's actually a thing in ChatGPT that you can, I don't know if it really matters, but, again, rebel without a cause, that you can actually turn off a setting that's automatically on that says that it can use what you put in there for data and research or whatever. You can actually turn that off.
And then you can actually believe that you turned it
Right,
off.
exactly. Like I said, rebel without a cause, but do it. I say do it. Turn it off.
Conversation is so great, I don't want to interrupt it. But okay, so my question is, great panel, thank you so much. So my question is really about the environmental justice component that we're not thinking about. And just to your point,
as a scholar myself, as a doctor as well, you know, ChatGPT is kind of plagiarism. So that's why when you put your work in there and they're coming back with the citations, it's incorrect. And they're coming up with a different type of plagiarism check now to figure out that. Because there's a 30-minute, 30% for the plagiarism for Turnitin, and it's going to be the same for AI. And ChatGPT lately have been lobotomized by the administration, so move to something else, Claude or something else as well. And to your point of the AI is just like a vehicle, like a car. If somebody get behind a car and kill somebody, nobody is blaming the car. Okay, it's blaming the person, the intention, and all of that stuff. So you have to look at AI and technology as a vehicle. But to the environmental justice question, how are you, especially because you said you're a proponent of AI, and you know, it's here. We can't get rid of it. 70%, the water, our bodies are 70% water. It needs a cooling system for the data centers in order for us to use AI. So when we're using it frivolously, we're actually using, you know, water to cool the data systems that our bodies need. It doesn't need recycled water. It needs fresh water, the same water we need to drink and to survive for ourselves. So my question is
1,000%. I had that actually as one of the issues I wanted to bring up around the environment. I actually did a film about climate and environmental justice and the Green New Deal and AI, and so I'm not a proponent of AI. What I meant to say is that I don't shy away from technology, but I try to remain in control of it, and I make ethical decisions around what I use and what I don't use. So I don't use ChatGPT for that reason, because I don't know how to get around that. It is incredibly damaging to the environment. So if you're going in there and you're just for fun and like having it generate like a photograph and stuff, like it's devastating. So I don't have an answer for that, but like that was actually something like, you know, there's just so many things that we can talk about. But that speaks to the broader thing about like the ethical, there's implications to everything. And so like I don't use ChatGPT for that reason. But I know that most people don't even know about the environmental thing, and they use it to in their spare time or to entertain themselves. And it's devastating. It is a problem. And again, when we're looking at this in the capitalist context, they're not going to be telling you, like, you know, this is really damaging to the environment. You know what I mean? So it's among all the things that we have to think about. And I think it has also implications. I wanted to say really quick about preservation. I make films. I'm going through archives. It's becoming increasingly difficult to verify and validate like what is real and what is not. But it's really an important tool for us, because our stuff is being erased. Like, how do we leverage this to make sure that we preserve? So it's just like, it's everything. It's both, it's bad, good, like, you know, it's just a lot to navigate.
Just
and
to that last
we
point.
have to go slow to go fast, is like an expression, because like, you can be so caught up in like trying to keep up and doing the things, you're like, I'll think about that tomorrow, or I'll figure that out tomorrow, and you never do. And so sometimes you just have to intentionally be like, I'm gonna be slower than everybody else while I sort this out.
Okay, just for the interest of time, we're going to have Dr. Bird be the last question.
Oh, no pressure. Hi, everyone. I wanted to flag that how quickly the question of technology became a question of AI, because I also have an interest in the way genetically modified foods, genetically altered seeds are a part of this relationship to technology. I think my question is about, like, do we think that there is a fear of being left behind or of being outside, that the sort of the capitalist cycle to produce, to provide, makes it challenging to reckon with the ways that I think structurally Blackness is moved outside of systems all the time. And I think that the way that technology is so often for the productive means, we lose sight of the transformative, the negative transformative aspects. And so thinking more about the ecological or environmental justice impact, right? Like an heirloom seed is one that's been true 7 generations. And this idea of truth for 7 generations is an indigenous truth to the Americas, to Africa in different ways. And our technology is not just working on our minds, right? It's working on our bodies. And so I'm questioning how this conversation of technology becomes about just the social or just the mental.
Because it was about technology and literature.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to address, because it's so interesting that you brought up seeds and in particular. So in terms of like framing it around AI, given that this was supposed to be in literature, it was supposed to be a 45-minute, and it's supposed to be a 45-minute conversation. I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way and get that answered for people who are kind of overwhelmed and kind of like it's very mystified for them. But the conversation around technology is far broader. So I was talking about like a film that I just invited everyone to called Seeds, literally called Seeds. It's a film about Black generational farmers, specifically those who have owned their land for over 100 years, centennial farmers. So in the past 100 years, it's gone from like 98% to like less than 1% still own their land. So it is a really tenuous legacy. And these folks are dying. Like the stars of my film are in their 80s, okay? And so part of like how I'm using social media to do impact around the film is about intergenerational knowledge and about the lessons that we get from our elders. Because we'll have like a farmer, for example, he goes through great lengths to cultivate his seeds every year so that he can resist exactly what you're talking about and have the seeds that to him, he explains, has all the nutrients and all the things that it needs to have. And it's very difficult to do that as a farmer because if like corporations have been so invasive, this isn't coming, I'm just sharing this, that like if their seeds like blow onto your property, you can be like in danger. You could be accused of you're committing a crime. You're stealing. It's insane that like the wind is like not even within your purview. So anyway, I say all that to say that talking about AI was not about to ignore all those other things, but it was about staying within the frame of the conversation. Right. But like we can see the implications of that everywhere. So come see my film on Sunday. And you know, this is the thing about engagement and all the things. Like, I mean that it is a healing, transformative, beautiful film for Black people that I just feel like I want to share it in that context. Not like I need you to buy a ticket, but like seriously, that it gets into all of that through a completely different lens, and it just kind of emerges through the story. But it's centered around what Black people basically care for this land and for this country. So.
Well, thank you. And I know some people had some questions, and so that'll tie into what I'm about to announce. But just can we give a final applause for the panel? And so there will be a book signing following this panel immediately. So if you have any questions and if you want to support the writers, you can go and have conversations with them, buy their books, and have them sign them, and they can probably answer your question for you. So make sure to go down and support the book signing. Also, there's a vendor marketplace where you could buy and support from local businesses. Yes, and also please remember to subscribe to the mailing list and to make a donation to continue to support the Center for Black Literature. No amount is too small, and the website is centerforblackLiterature.org. Yes, and our final day begins tomorrow afternoon at 1:30 right here. The day will end with our awards program at 6 p.m. tomorrow, where we will honor Imani Perry, Castahan Chacole, and Camille Dungy. So thank you all.
And thank you to the Center for Black Literature, National Black Writers Conference. And yes, no donation is too small, but no donation is too big. Drop the bag.
So now I got to go look up your film.